as Portia said, my name's Wayde. Can I first of all just go around the room? Where are we all from here today? Like, anyone can just yell out wherever you're from. Your hometown? Townsville? New York City? Okay, yeah. Colombia, Malaysia, Mackay, Townsville, any Victoria, any Ingham, any Burdekin, Guru, yes, tick, excellent, love that. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about small towns, big dreams, but I guess it doesn't really matter where you're from. I want to talk about some of the opportunities that are presented to me by growing up in a small town. That was Ingham, which is just an hour, 100 kilometres north of Townsville, and some of the things that as I was growing up that I've been able to experience that have set me in good position for being able to do a few things along the way. Now, when you talk about small towns, big dreams, inspiring success, I think you probably should have got the new Queensland Premier here, David Crisafulli, who is an Ingham boy. So he's a North Queenslander, he's from Ingham, and I think that's wonderful that we've got somebody that has been able to grow up in a small town and reach the political heights that he has. So today I want to talk to you about my journey growing up in Ingham and getting to the role of CEO of Regional Development Australia. I want to talk to you a little bit about sometimes how you can go off path with a purpose in mind, and that small incremental steps towards your goal. When you take those small steps, you create your own luck. Then I want to tell you about what's happening in the North Queensland and Northwest Queensland region, because I would hope everybody here, when they finish their study, is staying in the region, because there are a heap of opportunities and there's no need to go to those capital cities or the southeast corner to get those opportunities. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. And then I want to leave you with some takeaways to maybe focus on. And throughout it, if there's something you want to ask about, just ask. I really wanted to be an informal event. We don't have to wait till the end to ask the question. So if there's something that you want to know or interest in, please just yell out. And same with those online. If you want to type in the chat, and we can answer those questions. So a little bit about me. CEO of Regional Development Australia. There's 50 RDAs across Australia. Our patch is the North Queensland region. So from Palm Island in the east, along the northwest corridor, so it includes Charters Towers, Flinders, Richmond, McKinlay, Cloncurry, Mount Isa, up to the Gulf of Carpentaria, including Carpentaria, Burketown and Doomadgee. So we're funded by the federal government, and our main focus is to facilitate economic development outcomes. Now, what does that mean? It means playing our role in a region that is growing and growing fast. What we do is we don't try and reinvent the wheel. If there's things that need to be done that aren't being led, we will lead them. If there are things that people are doing, we will support them. So economic development, what does that mean? Everyone's heard of the project Copper String, that sort of project happening. There needs to be a workforce in relation to Copper String. There's other projects that are going to attach along the way into Copper String. All those communities along that are going to be impacted by a $6 billion project. That is all encompassed into economic and regional development. Now, what do you have to study to get into that? I'd argue a sense of being interested in the community you live in. If you are interested and passionate about the region that you live in, then you're probably somebody who could go down that path. Why did I get into this? A number of years ago, I had a fundamental belief that governments were creating super cities in the southeast corner, in Sydney, in Melbourne. And so we're getting bigger and bigger, major capital cities at the expense of these amazing smaller communities. And post-COVID, I think what's happened is people have started to realise big cities are too big for me, and they're moving to the big regional centres. Townsville, one of them, Geelong, Newcastle are growing. People in those regions are starting to say, too busy for me, I'm going to move to the smaller towns. And we're starting to see some growth in Ingham, in Ayr, in Charters Towers. But there's even people that are probably starting to say, I want a different pace of lifestyle, and are moving to the northwest, moving to the Gulf. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the opportunities that also present themselves for people that are just finishing their degrees, or maybe you're early or young in your career. So back to me, grew up in Ingham, cane farm. My family still operates a cane farm and cattle, oldest of 5. Went to Ingham State and Ingham High Primary, Ingham primary and Ingham High. Came to JCU back in 1996. It's a long time ago. Did Bachelor of Commerce, stayed at St. Mark's College. Amazing 3 years of my life. Got a job at PricewaterhouseCoopers in Townsville. And then from there, moved across to WMC. They were operating the Phosphate Hill mine. So over those next few years, they sold and were acquired by Incitec Pivot and got to learn some amazing things along the way. Starting your career locally and having those support networks or in a smaller environment gets you exposed to a lot early. So I know there's always an option to go to the big capital cities. Sometimes, and we see this when we talk to people, you can be pigeonholed. Not that it's a bad thing, but in a smaller region, you get exposed to a lot more early on. Worked at WMC and got to experience BHP taking over WMC, BHP selling Phosphate Hill to Incitec Pivot, and again, got to work and experience with some amazing people along the way. I also ran a business improvement project for Incitec Pivot when they first acquired the Phosphate Hill mine. Now, this is where I started to learn the first thing in the career. You don't realise this at the time, by the way, but relationships. So you know how you have to do those annoying group subjects that I have no doubt you're like, yep, another group subject, here we go. Yeah, you're all sort of shaking your head. Really important. Why? Because you learn how to build relationships. You could be 20, 21, 19, whatever it might be, and you're working in a group assignment, someone who's 30, 40, and it's really important there. Those skills you learn in working in groups, I think, are absolutely critical, because in the career, and especially as we forge really fast into advancements in technology, it's always going to be that person or people who can build those relationships with people that are going to be successful. Because especially in this game, the ability to be able to pick up a phone, make a phone call, have that respect and relationship means you can get things done a whole lot quicker than what you could do if you didn't develop those relationships. So that's what became really apparent, because we had an aggressive target of costs to cut. So when I started that role, you walk in and everyone on the mine site, they're like, oh, here you go, you're here to cut costs. So very quickly, you've got to try and gain their respect and rapport, because without them, it doesn't happen. And so what we did is we worked together to say, this isn't about cost cutting. This is about more tons. This is about more production. This is about lowering the cost per ton. So when the price does this, if our cost per ton is here, we don't have to make any rash or silly decisions. So all of a sudden, everybody there goes, oh, you're here to help me. And so by that, they were able to give me the answers and the things that we needed to do to actually make the projects a success. Now, after that year, we were able to improve their EBIT, earnings before interest and tax, by $42.4 million, with an ongoing benefit of $47 million a year. Wasn't me. I was just the one who collated their ideas, gained their trust, and actually then implemented it. So that ability to build a relationship, like, I cannot stress how important that is, not only now, but also in the future. After Phosphate Hill, I went across. BHP at the time owned Queensland Nickel, worked there, helped them transition across to Clive Palmer. And then after working for Clive for a few years, I stepped away and I got into commercial real estate. I'd had enough of the corporate world, didn't want to do accounting anymore, got into commercial real estate. Now, I'm possibly the worst commercial real estate agent you would have laid your eyes on. Terrible. Didn't sell anything, didn't lease anything. But what I learned was there were some really consistent sales and leasing consultants that every morning they would go and make their calls. Because if they made their calls, they would get their inquiries, they would get their listings, they would get more inquiries, and they would get their sales. So it taught me that there are things you need to do, there are actions to enable yourself to get things down the track. If you just sit there and wait for the phone to call, that's not going to happen. Now, you can take that into your life, and you can take that into, who do I need to meet now, or who can I start to speak to that will be useful for my career? And this isn't about going, oh, I'm going to meet that person, because I want to get here. Just develop the relationships, because there will be relationships you develop now in 2024 that in 2034 or 2044, you'd be like, those relationships. So it's and I look at it like the new Minister for Natural Resources and Mines, Dale Last, he was my personal trainer in 2005. And we've always kept in contact with each other. But it's a weird example, but it's something that develop the relationships, nurture them, and don't expect anything from them up front. Because if you're just in relationships just for what's in it for me, it's not going to be genuine. And that's the really important thing. After my time in commercial real estate, I went back to PwC to do their business improvement program and launch that in North Queensland. And again, that taught me about a great mentor who I work with taught me 3 concepts: insight, focus, and discipline. And that was for businesses, but you can apply it to any aspect of your life. You need the right insight, whether it be business or your life, to identify what you need to change. You then need to focus on that, whatever it might be, and then you need the discipline to stick to it. So those things have really stuck with me: insight, focus, and discipline. Not only for business improvement, but for your own life and career journey. From there, I got involved in consulting to local governments to help them set their vision and their values and how they want to progress. And then worked at Townsville City Council, worked at Townsville Enterprise, which taught me a lot about advocating, taught me a lot about regional development. And over the last 3 years, I've been in this role at Regional Development Australia, which I love because I get to help 14 local governments and I get to help communities like my hometown of Ingham, but also the smaller communities between Townsville and Mount Isa and up to the Gulf achieve what they want to achieve. And at the moment, there's a real interest in moving to those towns. We're doing a project for them now where we're doing a livability and jobs website. We've completed that for North Queensland and we're in the process of doing it for Northwest Queensland. And what we did is we interviewed 45 different people about what they loved about the region and how they came about moving to the region. And they said this: I moved to Mount Isa because there was an opportunity. I only wanted to stay a year, but I loved it so much. The adventure was wonderful. I've stayed for 20 years. Same with people in the Gulf of Carpentaria. Why did you move here? I moved here for an opportunity to run the Barramundi Discovery Centre. Oh, but I love the place. The community's wonderful and you can do something different all the time. So again, don't pigeonhole yourself into not considering a move into the regions, because what you'll find is you're able to access all these different opportunities and able to access an amazing lifestyle that you probably would not have considered had you not have actually explored it. So our job, we're going to launch that next month, is to promote that to the world. And again, what we're saying is, we're not saying go and move to Northwest Queensland. What we're saying is not enough people are aware of the opportunities that exist to make the informed decision. And that's part of why I'm here today, is to say, not to say you need to go and live in Cloncurry or you need to go and live in Hughenden. It's to say, have you considered it? Because if you consider it, there will be, and there is growing opportunities for you to experience those opportunities. So really passionate about trying to grow that. So that's a little bit about sort of the career to date, very quickly. I want to talk to you now a little bit about, you can go off your career or you don't have to have a set pathway in mind. I know for a fact, when I finished university, my pathway was, I want to go to university, do my CA and become a chartered accountant, and then I want to become a partner at PwC. Well, that changed in 2005, and I wouldn't have, if I said you'd be the CEO of Regional Development Australia, I would have said, you're mad, not a chance, I'm not interested. So keep your options open as well. Your career pathway and your careers will change, and what you're wanting to experience and drive forward will change. My weekend hobby is I get to call rugby league for Triple M as part of the Cowboys call team. And I've done that since 2009. So I just finished my 16th year. Now, that is an absolute passion, and it's a you pinch yourself moment where you get to call rugby league and called the Cowboys grand finals in 05 and 07 and the semi-finals. So been very, very lucky to do that. Now, I've always had a media or journalism type interest, but when I finished school, it was commerce or journalism. Now, two completely separate careers here, right? Like two completely. I took commerce. But it didn't completely close the door on that, because in and around 2006, and this is about those small steps, I wanted to do more in that field. I wanted to call sport, but you don't just rock up to a radio station or a television station and say, I want to call this. Doesn't happen, right? Doesn't happen at all. So what I did is Surf Life Saving Queensland. I was involved with that. They were running a carnival announcers course, and this course was in Mackay. Drove myself to that, did that, and I thought, when I was up there going, first call under 12 flags to Arena 1, I thought, what am I doing? But that afternoon, the coordinator couldn't see the relays. And he said, here, go down and call the relays. And so I commentated that. Afterwards, he said, I can't pay for you to come down, but there's a Ironman Championship on the Gold Coast next weekend. If you can get down there, I'll give you a start. So I started doing that, to the point where I got to do some Ironman series and other surf life-saving, like commentary on the beach for Surf Life Saving Queensland and Surf Life Saving Australia. But while I was doing that, Yahoo 7, remember that website back in the day? They had a competition that you could go to the Beijing Olympic Games. So you had to film yourself commentating an event. And I went and did the toad races on Magnetic Island. Got my cousin, who was a videographer, who just finished graphic design at JCU. I said, oh, we're going to do a story here. And we literally did a story like it was an Olympic event, the toad racing. Cut a long story short, I won the competition and got 3 weeks in Beijing at the Olympics with Yahoo 7. Now, that was one of the best experiences of my life, being able to do that, me and a producer, director, videographer. We filmed 44 stories for Yahoo 7. Now, this is in 2008, remember, like when streaming and that sort of stuff that we take for granted now, it was only coming on. Like we created a Facebook page in 2008, and we were jumping for joy that we had 157 likes on the page, right? But what that showed with that is that we got over 110,000 streams, and that's when, it wasn't live streaming, and so that experience there. And when I had radio stations ringing and wanting to interview, and the article in the paper was toad race commentator off to the Olympics. They thought my day job was a toad race commentator. But again, like if I don't go to that carnival announcers course in Mackay, if I don't put the application in for that competition, there's 500 entrants. But I was like if you set yourself a goal, take those little steps and those little opportunities. Does that make sense? Like, even if it's a phone call or even if it's a competition, that if it guides you or gets you moving closer, like it's the same. Like after today, take the opportunity, make some contacts. Like if anyone wants to catch up, coffees, whatever, I'm happy to do that. Because if I introduce you to someone or you meet somebody, that could play a role in your future career where you won't know it today. 30 years, 20 years, 15 years down the track, you go, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be here now. So that's the really important thing. So went to China, we filmed stories. We took the Australian women's gymnastics team to the Great Wall of China. We took Kai Hurst snowboarding in a snow dome. It was like an incredible experience because it was sponsored by Panasonic. At the time, I was doing a little bit of community radio because a friend I work with at Phosphate Hill knew Minty, Minty, who hosts just about everything. He was at Triple T. And so I started doing a little bit on radio. He then goes back to then 4TO and calls and said, hey, they're looking for someone to drive the prize patrol for Pricey in the morning. And a little bit of arrogant side of me thought to myself, I've just come back from the Olympics and they want me to hand out bread and milk. And then I rung the guy I went to China with and he said, don't you want to call the footy? Yes. Aren't they the radio station that calls the footy? Yes. And they're offering you a job. It's not the ideal job, but they're offering you something. Yes. Hey, when can I start? Started in December. 3 months later, the guys who were doing the call team jumped ship to another radio station, and I get a phone call. What are you doing next weekend? Nothing. Do you want to call the footy? The guys have jumped ship to another radio station. That's I don't say as simple, but it's as simple as it can happen if you've done those little steps and they work in the lead up. It's all that started 3 and something years before it, that little steps, little steps, little steps. And at the time, it's only from a bit of reflection in terms of, this is how it's happened, that I was able to go, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be there. And you know what my first job was? I had to take the gear and set it up. And I was going to be the co-caller. And the co-caller technically should have had 100 or 150 first grade games experience. And if I was in a big capital city, you know what my job would have been? Here, Wayde, take the gear, set it up, not calling because we've got access to the people we need. Because I'm in Townsville, they're like, can you call it or co-call it? And so what that meant is I'd make sure I'd really prepare, because I wasn't a rugby league player. I didn't play 100 NRL games or 150 NRL games. And then again, just co-calling, setting it up. The home game commentator was a bloke by the name of Jason Costigan, broadcaster, called lots of games. Start of 2012, he became the member for the Whitsundays in the state parliament. They're like, well, you can't do it anymore. And they said, do you want to do the play-by-play stuff? And so ever since 2012, I've been doing the play-by-play commentary. And they will have to drag me kicking and screaming out if they ever want to stop doing that. So if anyone's listening. But again, I just want to tell that story because it's 16 years, but it's those little steps that were done before it, and I was interested in it. You have to make that happen. So those, if there's things you want to do, find out those little steps, those little connections, those little relationships you can get to that will make a seriously important impact to the region. Sorry, to your own life. Just gonna make sure. I just want to go back to relationships as well. I touched on the relationship, you know, in how that can get things done. In terms of that, you know, when you say, oh, just develop relationships, it's not that simple, right? So what you need to do, I think, is make sure you never go in demanding respect. It's always something you have to earn. One of the things I've got written down here, you have to be self-aware. And what does that mean? Well, when you're in meetings or when you're starting to develop those relationships, if you find you're in a meeting and you're always talking, and I sometimes have to check myself because I'm always put my point forward, I'm like, you know what, how about you shut up now and let some other people, or try and, you know, encourage some broader discussion. So that's important about being self-aware. Learn how to effectively chair a meeting. I think that's important too, because quite often you want to be able to be respectful and give everybody a view, but keep it moving along, and that can help. Learn how to present. I think that's really important. Get your message across. Like, people hate presenting, but if you can get comfortable being uncomfortable doing it. So I think that the message there is you'll always be a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit nervous doing it, but it is something that you can learn, and something that if you practice is really useful. Less is more. Less is more. That's really important as well. You don't need to come across as the smartest person in the room, because it can tell, and don't be pushy. And so what I find, especially when I interview staff, a key component for me is professional but polite. That's really important in terms of building those relationships. Any questions so far? Or we can go back to yeah. Yep. When you know when to speak something and when to speak, yep. That's a really good question. I guess it comes down to, like, if it's don't be looking for that external validation or that external, how am I going right now? If it's something that you're like, I love this job and I want to continue, don't pivot. So there will be setbacks, there will be things that you go, oh no, this is not working out. But take the time to, like, you know, reflect and do that you know, being self-aware to go, I really want to do this, so I'm gonna keep cracking on and doing it. So don't let someone else go, oh look, we don't think it was for you. Like at PwC, after my first 6 months, I was in tax and accounting. They said to me, how do you think you're going in tax and accounting? I said, not real good if we're having this conversation. And they said, we think you'd be better in audit. What do you think? I said, I'll do anything, just don't sack me. But I stayed there, and that better suited me. And so then I was able to, like, become a manager after 4 or 5 years, spent some time up in Cairns. So my advice for that would be only pivot if you want to. And that's the same, like around 2008, 9, 10, when I won that competition and started to do a lot in the media space, there was opportunities for me to go across and get into sports journalism, especially with down in the Gold Coast and Sunny Coast, especially with Ironman and lifesaving being so big. But I was in a role where I just couldn't see myself going to starting way back from scratch. Now, do I regret not doing that? No, I don't regret that. Would I have liked to seen where that went? Absolutely. So does that answer your question? Like don't allow external forces to, they're considerations, but don't allow external forces to actually dictate what you want to do.
I've got a second.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's say, I'm in my situation where I'm still in university, I'm graduating, and someone who's way further ahead, how can I create value to that relationship?
So you're saying because they're way more advanced in their career, and don't overthink that. Go and if that person, go and catch up, have a conversation, because I'll give you an example. If we caught up, I'd be interested in what's someone who's about to graduate, what are they thinking about when they're about to leave university, and what do we need to do as a region to make sure people like yourself stay in this region and not move. So you wouldn't have thought that would be of value to me, but I want to know that. So don't let that withhold you from making contact with someone and having a coffee with someone, or developing that relationship with them. And it's not something that, you don't have to be in contact with them weekly or fortnightly or monthly. It's just a regular, hey, how you text or a phone call, or let's have a coffee. But yeah, I think don't not do it because you don't think you'll add value to somebody. It's not about that. It's just about having that conversation. And you'll know after a couple of coffees, you're like, oh, I like catching up with this person. And you'll subconsciously both will do it more. And if there's not, that's okay.
So can I just interrupt? Can I just still plug then? Nash, that's a great opportunity for you to get involved in the mentor program next year. So Wayde is actually one of our mentors, and other amazing industry professionals such as Wayde actually mentor second, third year CBLG students. So we'll put out the EOI early in the new year. So pay attention to that, apply for that, because you might get matched with Wayde or somebody equally as amazing.
And a disclaimer there, I'm not as organised as what it might appear from this up here too, just for the record, all right? So I might come across as like, oh, look, we've got it all sorted. Let me be very, very clear and say, I don't. But again, it's about making sure you're driving home with your strengths and getting that assistance and people around you that of the things you're not particularly strong of. So any others, and we can keep pressing along. I now want to talk to you about what's happening in the region. I've talked about opportunities and whatnot. So we're experiencing here in this region in North and Northwest Queensland, I think a once in a generation thing that's happening. So what you're starting to see is an amazing amount of public sector investment in infrastructure. Copper String, you're seeing the hospital about to spend $500 million to $1 billion on their expansion, redevelopment, coupled with a significant investment, public sector investment in health, defence, which is creating an investment from the private sector. When you couple all that together, we've got a pipeline of projects in the vicinity of about $27 billion. And so that's over the next 5 to 7 years. Now, what we've just finished completing is a review on the implications of that. And now there's a number of different figures that people are throwing around, 27 billion, 36 billion. In my mind, it doesn't matter what it is. There's all similar repercussions. There's a significant amount of jobs that are going to be created and available, no question about it. That's going to put strain significantly on the workforce. There's going to be a significant strain on housing. So we modelled it at 27 billion. We also modelled it at about 8.5 billion, which is 30% of that is committed projects in the region at the moment. So if you're coming towards the end of your, your degree or in the middle of it, even at the start, when you finish, these projects will be ramped right up. And what does that mean? Well, it means there are going to be more jobs in your career path than what there's ever been. You look at Powerlink, who are building copper string in Townsville. Now, I don't know how big at last count their office is, but most of those jobs previously were in Brisbane. Now they've created an office and they've got people in community engagement. They've got people in project management. They've got people in finance. So that is wonderful news for this region. Also off the back of that is an enormous renewable energy opportunity in and around the Hughenden area. So in and around the Hughenden area, there's 32 gigawatts of renewable generation that can potentially be harvest or whatever you want to call it by solar or wind. And that's not me saying that, that's the Australian Energy Market Operator. In and around the Julia Creek area, huge opportunity for vanadium, which is a growing critical mineral. And then you've got the area around Mount Isa and Cloncurry with copper. So to cut a long story short, because of decarbonisation, electrification, this region in particular is extremely well placed. Like I say that to my other RDA colleagues, that in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be the centre of the universe. Now, I say that a little bit jokingly and tongue in cheek, but a little bit serious, because that's what's going to happen. So a number of years ago when Queensland Nickel closed, we had double-digit unemployment about 2016, 2017, right? The region was doing it really tough. Now it's under 4 or thereabouts. So back then we were screaming out for projects. Now I say we're screaming out for the 3 Ps. People to deliver the projects, a place for them to live, and we need to provide the services that people expect so we can live, learn and earn in our region. And so those 3 Ps, we're doing a bit of work in that space at the moment. So the people bit to deliver the projects, we're working a lot on the workforce and workforce strategy. And so we do it under 4 pillars. So there's not one silver bullet to say, let's just bring in more people, we'll solve this problem, because the number's huge. The first pillar is attraction and retention, and that's attracting people to the region, but also retaining them. So don't go anywhere, stay in here. The second one is career influence and pathways, and this is what I was talking about before. I don't think we do a good enough job at schools and for our students to let people know of what's coming up in the region. I get to hear about it every day to the point that I'm like, oh, I don't want to speak about it anymore. But that assumption is wrong. We need to be doing a better job. So everyone sitting here goes, I know what's coming up in the region. I know there's this project, there's this opportunity, there's this defence industry. So that's really important. The next one is participation. And that's where people that want to participate in the workforce that for whatever reason might be challenged, we need to break down those barriers. And we've done some work with Christy there at the Oasis, where Defence Force, people that have been in defence that are transitioning out, they do an excellent job at helping them get into the workforce, because they have all these skills that in the civilian world we can absolutely use. But it's not just defence, it's about others that might have some challenges getting in there. So we do a fair bit of work in that space. And the last one is businesses, and talking to businesses about what they need to do to make sure they're aware and ready for the workforce challenges. The other small project that we've been doing is in relation to housing and the use of modular housing in the rural and remote communities. If you can't get workforce, you're not going to have people to be able to build houses. So we did a project where we put forward to the state government about utilising modular housing in the communities, because it gets it there quicker and it's less costly than building it from scratch. And the Queensland government have now created their modern methods of construction for their state-based housing. And that's really important. Again, not going to solve the problem overnight, but by rolling out housing quicker in these rural and remote communities, it makes them more livable and it makes it easier to attract people. And quite often people in these areas, the councils run the airstrip, the councils run the childcare centre, all very important to make sure that it's staffed. So there's some of the projects that we're working on at the moment. And my last comment in relation to that pipeline of projects is creating some unintended consequences. So it's starting to force up labour costs in construction, which can sometimes put private sector, projects at risk. It's starting to drive up costs, which means that It's harder to get people to build a house. I don't know if anyone's tried to renovate or tried to get somebody to a tradie at the moment. I think difficult is an understatement. But so again, they're the sort of unintended consequences that we don't want. My final bits of advice, and we have some time for questions. Say yes. Take the opportunity. You never know where it will lead. Obviously, don't do it if you really don't want to do it. I'm not saying say yes if I don't want to do it. But where there are things or introductions or people you can meet, you never know where that will go. Relationships are key. Like, I can't underestimate that. The ability to form those relationships will keep you in good stead down the track to pick up a phone and say, hey, I need some help with this. Can we do that? I know there's always, people, more and more via email, by text, but you can't beat that personal relationship. And no form of technology will ever, make that obsolete. There might be things will be done by technology quicker, but the ability to be able to take that information and present it to people and be authentic and make sure that people can, understand what you've said is really important. And small regions create abundance of opportunities that you might not be aware of. So be aware of that. If you get an opportunity, and what I mean by small regions, compared to those big capital cities, Townsville's a small region. So this place has, and again, like people say, oh, would you ever go to a capital city to call footy? No, why would I? Because I get to call a game of NRL a week. If I go down there, they'll be like, hey, mate, you're on the roster. You might get one every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, not a chance. And so those opportunities are there, and they're there everywhere. And the other one is learn about your region. Learn about what's happening in the region, because that can help inform. You might have a little light bulb moment. They'd be like, hey, I never thought of that. I'm really interested in that. So learn about your region. Happy to take questions. Yep.
How do you prioritize your project? I'm asking because Israel, what it does is creates a comprehensive framework with economic variables and assess which project will deliver better results for community or for security purposes, and that's how they achieve the decision-making problem. So here where you have tons of funding, how do you do it? How do you do it?
Yeah, so that way that you described, that's the way we should be doing it. So that is the way we should be doing it. We don't have, in terms of federal and state government projects, we don't have, we can advocate or put our case forward into what projects we think are of a higher priority, but we're not involved in the decision-making process at a state and federal government in terms of do this project, do that project. So in Australia, you probably, the political, does it win votes? Yes, that probably comes into play as well. Does what we try and do when we advocate to get projects done is to say, well, this is your strategy, and we're actually, you want to mine more critical minerals, you want to transition into renewable energy. Well, Hughenden has this, Julia Creek has this, the Northwest has this, so we think you should build copper string, because if you build it, you'll be able to enable all these things. Does that make sense? So our role is about creating the narrative to say to state and federal governments, this is why we think you should do this project. And it's up to government, which I don't think governments, certainly in Australia, do a particularly good job at prioritising projects. And I think what you're seeing now is just all these projects that are about to start and going, how are we going to deliver them? And so I think the key for government now is prioritisation, coordination, and alignment, which, do you know how many votes are in those three things? Absolutely none. Has anyone watched that ABC show Utopia? The reason they're able to create 5 or 6 series is because people come and tell them this is what's happened. Yeah, it's, what do you call it? Reality, or art imitating reality? Yeah, yeah. So I agree with you. There needs to be a better process, but by and large, it's not that straightforward, if that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We've in the next couple of weeks, we'll release our construction that pipeline report that I spoke about. That's a really fantastic summary to do that. And even happy if there's a group of you that want to, create a Teams meeting, we'll have a little session if you want to talk through that report, and you can ask questions about it. So more than happy to do that if you wanted to do that. That's a good summary. And then in the next, probably just before Christmas, we're going to release a bit of a labour force scan, which is we've dug deep into what the workforce in North Queensland's done over the last 2 years. So it shows, construction's growing significantly by 6,000-7,000 jobs, and other sectors like health's, plateauing, and education's, constricting a little bit. So all signs of where you start to see the trajectory of a region go like that. So yeah. RDA. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yep, definitely. Absolutely. But as I said, more than happy if you wanted to coordinate something after this, over the next few weeks, that, I don't know, after evening, whatever, happy to do that. No worries at all. Because yeah, it is about learning and understanding just where those projects are happening and the opportunities are arising. Yep. There isn't or hasn't been, but certainly open to the opportunity and how we make that sort of happen. Certainly I'm anything we can do to educate people about what's happening, in the region, because we're only a small team. We've got, myself, 2 full-time staff and a part-time admin assistant. But yeah, certainly happy to have some conversation about that. That's for sure.
Other than building learning how to build relationships, are there any other soft skills that you recommend in that?
No, I think that when I say build relationships, it's really quite broad, right? So I think having a knowledge about the region, building genuine partnerships and relationships, I think that's probably, and the other one I mentioned before is that ability to present in a pretty succinct way, because sometimes the hardest bit is you've got information like this and you've got a couple of minutes to get the key points forward. And it's the same whether you're talking to anybody, but more so in the political sphere. You've got 5 minutes with a politician to go, hey, we need to focus on X, Y, Z, and give them enough that they go, hang on, yeah, you're right, as opposed to saying, well, let me take you through this 35-page report. So that was my sort of comment about less is more. Even when I was at Townsville Enterprise, we were looking at advocacy documents to give to politicians to make decisions on funding. We went from doing a bit of A4, just page after page, which you need, by the way. It's not about not doing it, but it's about getting those 15 A4 pages and putting it into a 10-page glossy document with infographics and a table that says what we want. So it can be, this is why you need to do it. This is how much it's going to cost, and this is what we want from you.